Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Crystal and today I wanted to share with you the process and how I maintain a stream of consciousness or Dear Diary journal. For a more organized approach, I will be tackling the 5 W's and 1 H of my process. If you're only interested in the main content, check out the timestamps below so you can skip ahead to the part you want. But if you don't mind a little background, I recently finished the Serenity Journal that I was using as my stream of consciousness / Dear Diary notebook, and I started using this in February and I finished it in October. Completing this journal and starting a new one really made me happy, so I wanted to share my experience in case some of my process are applicable to you or maybe similar to your needs. I'm a huge lurker on Reddit among the journaling and stationery communities, and oftentimes there will be a post saying, I really want to start journaling but I don't know how, or something along those lines, and usually there are already a lot of replies and helpful advice when I come across those posts, so I really don't participate in the discussion anymore. But I would really love to share my own experience, so I hope this video will help at least one person out there. Also, some notes before we start. Unlike my other journals where I can freely flip through them because of the content, this is a private journal, so I won't be able to show you what's inside. Most importantly, a disclaimer. Everything I'm about to share here is based on my own experience, so some of it may be helpful to you, but it could also be that we will have entirely different circumstances, so none of it may be helpful or applicable, and that's okay too. So let's dive in. The first thing I wanted to address is who I do it for. Now you may be thinking, what a silly little thing. Of course you're journaling for yourself. Yes, of course, but the question really is, which self? It took me a long time to realize this, but eventually I discovered that tailoring a certain type of journaling to a specific part of myself just improved my journaling system. So when I talk about the different parts of self, it's not some deep philosophical thing. It's just a way to compartmentalize, and I'm talking about the past, present, and future self. But before I elaborate on that, let me show you all the different journals that I keep. So my main journal is really my memory keeper, and it's where I document my memories, space ephemera, and detail everything in a given moment or day. Then I have my diary. Usually I call this my stream of consciousness / Dear Diary journal, but for short, it's really just my diary. And it's where I am unfiltered, it's where I write my thoughts, feelings, emotions, all those things. Then I have my logger, and I usually refer to this as my bullet journal because it's where I usually keep my to-do lists, trackers, logs for the day, and collections. I also use a media and commonplace journal which I keep together on the same notebook, and it's where I log my consumed media and books as well as record information that I want to keep or take note of. Then I have my 2TNs, which are mainstays in my system. I use them for travel, but since I'm not traveling all the time, they double as part of my daily system. So when I break down each of those into the parts of self that I was talking about, the classification would look like this. So a lot of my journaling are really documentation for my future self. These are journals that I really want to go back to later to read and reminisce or even just reference. I archive these journals like I would a proper book because the intention is to view it again later for another time. Because these are for my future self, when I journal in these notebooks, I make an effort to decorate it, keep my handwriting neat and pretty, and just more creative and visually appealing overall. Meanwhile, my logger sits between my present and future self. I note my to-do lists or tasks and trackers in here, which are all things that keep me or help me organize and manage my present. my notes, logs, and collections, and everything that I jot down in this notebook are things that I can refer to in the future. But since it's functional, I really do not need to decorate it in any way. And then there's my diary, which falls between my past and present self. Mostly it is the present self, but as an overthinker, I cannot help but dwell on a lot of things that has already happened and scrutinize my past decisions, actions, words, just generally anything I've done and encountered. Later in the how I do it part of the video, I will list down the things that I write about in here, but relating it to the part of self, since this notebook is both for my past and present selves, it is meant to be used now but not revisited. Because of this, I do not care about how this looks, at least inside. I do not bother with beautifying it or decorating it in any way. It's just pen to paper, and that's really it. I think this is where a lot of the struggle comes from for those who want to start journaling, because they do not establish who they are writing for. It's so easy to assume that one is writing for themselves, but I think, and this is strictly just my opinion, a lot of potential journalers cannot bring themselves to begin because in their head there is an audience. Maybe they are thinking that someone down the road would read what they will write, and therefore journaling becomes this intimidating task for other people instead of being a practice for the self, which is what it's supposed to be. So, my advice is compartmentalize the different kinds of journaling you want to do and classify them according to the audience or the different parts of yourself. Currently, these are what I'm using. So I have a traveler's notebook, dot grid insert in the regular size, and I use my TWSBI Eco as my pen. But of course, these are just things specific to me, and you can always start journaling with any pen and notebook. Speaking from experience, I guess it is so easy to get hung up on comparing ourselves to others. In the age of influencers, it is so easy to get into the trap of trying to emulate a creator we admire or look up to and just follow everything that they do or buy all the same supplies that they use. And the reality is, doing those things just create more friction between us and something that we'd like to do, which in this case is journaling. So my advice for this is, make your favorite creators an inspiration, not a source for imitation. Make sure to tailor your process according to your needs and not how others do it. I've been writing in diaries since I was a kid, and what really worked for me is when I was way younger, I didn't have a lot of sources to overthink it. While buying school supplies, I will just have an extra notebook and that serves as my journal. Then the pen that I use is the same pen I use for my classes. Now that I'm older and I've been exposed to this bigger world of journaling and stationery, what's working for me is making sure that my notebook of choice is thin and it is fountain pen friendly. For me, a thin notebook means it's easier to finish and it's not that big of a commitment, while using a fountain pen just really elevates the experience of writing for me. My preference for a thin notebook brings us to the next W, which is the where. And the place where I usually journal is my spot on the couch. Sure, we have a study desk at home and an adequate dining table, but I always end up journaling the most on the couch with a throw pillow on my lap. Even though it's bad for my posture, I just stopped fighting it because it's working. Now I just have my diary and my pen case near my spot on the couch, and it's just easier to pick it up and start journaling away. So my advice for this is, find your most optimal journaling spot with the least bit of barrier. If you're like me, it could be your favorite spot on the couch, or if you're living with a lot of people, it could be somewhere quiet or secluded, or even outside of your home. Just try to notice your patterns and pick out the best place for you. From the where, the when is also very dependent on your specific circumstance, schedule, or routine. For me, I usually write in the morning when I wake up and then at night during my wind down routine. On specialized circumstances, I write during a random part of the day if faced with extreme emotions or stress. It's kind of hard to give advice on this part since the time on which you journal is specific to every individual. But generally, my advice is to insert your journaling time to a lull or an opening in your routine. That is, do not go out of your way to change your whole routine just to make room for journaling. Inserting journaling to an already existing routine will more likely be seamless and therefore successful. For example, you have time in the morning waiting for your coffee to cool down before drinking it. That very small window can be an opportunity to write some things down. Or it could be that in the evening, you always have movie night with your family or your partner or your roommate. The time it takes for them to decide which movie or show to pick can be a little bit of journaling time. Now we are moving on to the heavier W of the 5, and it is why I do it. And I do it because I am a very anxious person. My stream of consciousness / Dear Diary journal helps me a lot in managing my emotions, reflecting on my thoughts, moods, and feelings, and even something important as having better sleep. In my years of journaling, I have proven to myself that putting my anxieties into writing just gives me a lot of perspective. And although journaling isn't necessarily a cure, I've known it to be a very helpful tool in managing my negative thoughts and emotions. More than the other W's, this is where every person's experience would vary the most. Journaling is a very personal experience and every situation is different. It takes proper introspection to know what you need and want out of journaling. So my advice is, ask yourself the very basic questions first. Why do I want to begin journaling? What do I want to journal about? Your answers to these questions may set you on a clearer path to starting your journal. For example, your answer may be, I want a journal to preserve my key moments and memories. Then maybe you only need a memory keeping journal and not a diary. Or you may think, I want a journal because I want to preserve information I want to keep and refer back later. Then maybe what you need is a commonplace book. Or if you're more like me, then maybe you want to journal about all those things, and hence the need for compartmentalization and different notebooks. The thing is, the world of journaling is vast and there is something for everyone. You just need to find what's for you and what is applicable to your needs. Finally, we are in the final chapter of this video, and that is how I do my journaling. I know throughout this discussion, I have touched on different types of journals, but for this part, we are focusing on stream of consciousness or Dear Diary journaling. I'm going to share what I write about in my diary, and in turn, you can use these as prompts for your own journal. One of the times I find best to write in my journal is in the morning. It could be as soon as I wake up or inserted during my morning routine, like during breakfast or waiting for my coffee to cool down. Oftentimes, when I write during this part of the day, I journal about my dreams. I know we don't remember a lot of our dreams, but when I do, I try to record as much detail as I can on the page. Writing down your dream can also be a jump-off point of more writing and introspection. Sometimes I even try to decipher a dream by listing down the key elements and trying to Google a meaning for each just for fun. So for illustration purposes, this is how I would journal about a dream. This is just a fictional example, but this is exactly how I do it in my journal. I write the date first. Then, since my diary is basically a confidant in paper form, I always begin with a greeting. Then, I would describe a bit of what I'm doing in the moment, then proceed to describe the dream. So, we have here 11 November 2011 Friday. Then, I start with good morning. I am writing this while the coffee is brewing. It smells so good already. Then, I would proceed to describe the dream. So, this whole paragraph is a description. For example, anyway, I had this weird dream. I was walking down an empty street in this big city. The weather was great. I think it was early morning and the sunlight was still soft. Despite the beautiful setting, I knew this was a dystopian world. As I kept walking, the temperature kept dropping and it got darker because the tall buildings were obstructing the sun. Then out of nowhere, these giant tulip and daisy appear, and they start running toward me to attack me. All of a sudden, I had this high-tech blaster, question mark, in my hand, and I fight back. So after the description, I would start a new paragraph and try to interpret the dream on my own. I try to uncover what led me to dream about that and relate it to my feelings and even recent events. So for this paragraph, I say, as I said, weird. I guess I've been obsessing about florals lately, hence the flowers. But why are they attacking me? I have also been reading some dystopian books lately and I told myself I didn't like the genre. Then, if I have the time, that is when I would try to interpret the dream using some research. So this is what this paragraph is for. So I say, I tried to Google some symbolism and apparently flowers in general mean good things. Google says the combination of a tulip and daisy could mean a significant and positive transition in my life. Wow. For times I don't remember about my dreams, I usually write about what I'm anticipating for the rest of my day. I know every day is a fresh start, but for an anxious person like me, the uncertainty can still be daunting no matter how I try to be optimistic. So if it's kind of a meh day, I would write what I'm anxious about on that day and try to convince myself that I'm going to be okay. For example, my husband and I would have a trip somewhere. Since I am a nervous flyer, an incoming flight would very much be a great source of stress as soon as I wake up. So I will write what I'm anxious about, then I would list down all the reasons why I shouldn't be anxious about it. Most importantly, I would put a future me sentence in there where I envision what I would be doing or feeling when I get through the stuff that makes me anxious. It is kind of a manifestation practice. So I have this, for example. Good morning. Our flight to Vietnam is this afternoon and I'm already feeling very anxious about it. Just thinking about getting on the plane, thinking about takeoff and even possible turbulence give me this whole body chill. This is what I feel usually when I'm anxious. Then I have this. Still, despite my anxiety, I know I shouldn't worry because, bullet point, flying is a very safe form of transportation. I have flown on many flights before and I have always been okay. And turbulence may be scary, but it is normal and aircraft are built to withstand even very strong forms of turbulence. Then the future me statement is this. I am excited for future me who, after landing safely in Ho Chi Minh, will be excited to explore everything that HCM City has to offer. Aside from feeling so relieved about having a smooth flight, I'll be enjoying a very yummy coffee and pastry at that place we pinned. Something like that. If it is a good day, it would more like be a setting intentions kind of entry. When I'm in an upbeat mood, I would set an intention like, today I would complete all my tasks in my to-do list and it would be a productive day. Something along those lines. Now I know not everyone has the time in the morning to write in their journal and even I do not do it often. So another time I find best to write in my journal is at night before bed. I find that I have a lot I can write about at night just because I have the whole day to draw from. And also I am no longer in a rush to be anywhere at this time, unlike when I'm writing in the morning. So one thing I write about at night are thoughts and things that have bothered me earlier in the day or things that are still bothering me. I know this is something that's not for everyone because for some people, revisiting something upsetting actually brings back those original feelings for them. But if you're like me, who has a tendency of dwelling on some of these negative emotions or experiences, I find that writing it down unpacks those thoughts from my mind. By writing it down, it feels like I talked to someone about it, and therefore the practice clears the thought away, if that makes sense. The closest thing I can think of to illustrate this is me as a small cup, and the things that bother me are boiling water. If I let the boiling water stay inside me, it will overflow and spill everywhere. But the journal is a taller and bigger cup where I can transfer all that boiling water without it spilling anywhere. I don't think it's the best description, but I hope I somehow made sense with that. For this prompt and the next, I would like to credit Dr. Mike's video on his nighttime routine because it is actually where I got the idea back during the pandemic. So for some of you, this may be out of place for a wind down night journaling routine, but I have found it to be really helpful for me when I write down my to-do list for the next day. I try to look ahead in tomorrow's schedule and map out my tasks. So in my journal, it will look like this. Good evening, it is now time for my wind down routine. Tomorrow I will, bullet point 1, not snooze my alarm as it goes off. Bullet point 2, take my sunshine walk as early as I can. Bullet point 3, start working on my next writing project / outline. And so on. After writing down those things that I need to do tomorrow, I find that I no longer overthink or panic about my schedule for the next day. This next prompt is another thing I learned from the Dr. Mike video, and it is listing down the good things for today. In Dr. Mike's video, he actually says 3 good things, but I just modified it for myself to just say good things for today because I wanted to be flexible on how many I wrote about. So the idea is by writing down good things that happened for the day, we are retraining our mind to let go of the anxiety and think about the good things. That is a direct quote from Dr. Mike's video, which I will link below. And basically, the idea is to write the good thing and a brief reason why. So for my example, I just wrote 2 things and I just labeled it good things today. So one good thing is P, who is my husband, cooked my favorite butter garlic shrimp recipe for dinner. It was so good. And I wrote the reason in cursive. So despite his busy schedule, he always makes time to take care of me. Then another good thing is I read 30 pages today instead of doom scrolling. And the reason I wrote in cursive is the urge was strong to get my phone and just open Reddit, but instead I opened the timer app to get me started on reading. I'm proud of myself for this choice. Something like that. I did mention earlier that I prefer my diary to be a thin notebook, and that's because I also love the portability of bringing it outside of the house. Although I find it best to journal in the comfort of our home, sometimes there are just things outside that happen during the day that also warrants journaling. It could be anything that elicits big emotions or a stressful encounter. And anything that elicits big emotions could be positive or negative. It's a lot easier, of course, if it's something positive because joy usually brings out more tame reactions like smiling or even squealing in delight. But negative encounters can provoke some reactions from us that could be publicly awkward or socially embarrassing, like crying, cursing, or even shouting in anger or frustration. For example, someone just insulted you at your job, and even though they were completely out of line, you are still a rational and civilized person. So even if you have some intrusive thoughts, you really couldn't act on those and therefore just journal about it when you have the time. I really am speaking from experience here, but journaling in these types of cases for me has become a de-escalation tool. So what I would do is write down and describe in detail what happened, then write and point out all sources of negative emotion in that whole encounter. If it was a particularly bad exchange, I would even describe my intrusive thoughts as well. And with every word, I can feel myself calming down. The act of keeping busy writing is also preventing me from doing or saying something I might regret later on. My final prompt that I have for you in this video is to journal to practice delayed gratification. It could totally be applicable in different areas or activities, but for my experience, I find that I use this a lot in avoiding doom scrolling, retail therapy, and stress eating. When the need is strong in turning to those things, I try my best to pick up my journal and just write. Usually, I start with writing what I'm about to do for the moment. For example, I would say, I have this strong urge to open my Instagram right now, but instead I'm writing here because I know I will waste my time on the app again. Then I would plan out what I would do after writing the entry so I have a clear path of my replacement activity. So I would say, after writing this, I would read my book for 15 minutes, and if the time is up and I'm still enjoying it, then I would continue reading until the end of next chapter. Then I will eat dinner. Writing it this way not only distracts me from doing the thing that I am avoiding, but I also have a concrete plan of what to do instead. So those are the prompts that I have for you so far to start your journaling. I know it was kind of a long ramble just to get to the prompts part, but I also wanted to share the context as to how I found success and consistency in my journaling. If you made it this far in the video, please let me know by either commenting a pen emoji or telling me your favorite advice or prompt from this video. Thank you very much for sticking with me until the very end of this video. I really appreciate it, and I'm hoping to see you on the next one.